Listen Up with Jim Potts. Listen up, business owners, CFOs, human resource managers, and all managers and supervisors. Jim Potts is answering and addressing your questions and concerns, helping you stay out of court. Furthermore, please be advised that Jim's answers are not legal advice and are only intended as a guide based on his years of experience. The phone lines are open. 1-855-4-J-POTS. That's 1-855-457-6887. You can also email us at listenup@jameswilliampottsllc.com. Ready to listen up? Here is Jim Potts.
Hey, Jim Potts back on the air. Hey, you know what? The last show went over so well. I can't tell you how much positive feedback that we got from that, but we got but some people turned around and said, can you, how do you recognize, violent employee behavior? So I did a little research on that because, again, I'm not a, psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever category that would fall into. But they say that there's 8 warning signs of violent employees' behavior. So I thought I would follow up last week's segment with discussing the violent behavior, how to recognize it. Well, look, when violence occurs at work, employees may say that their violent coworker just snapped, as an example. Well, from what I've learned is that they don't just snap. They display warning signs long before they really act out whatever it is. The key is to talk to employers early in this pre-violent stage to offer assistance and let them know that their behavior is unacceptable. Now, that's how you have to do it. Now, look, there are managers out there that are totally afraid of certain people. It could be because of their size. Sometimes you hire somebody, you find out now they're gang affiliated. I mean, there are people out there who as managers, don't really like the idea of confrontation. I get it. But if you do have those fears, then you need to have somebody else with you when you have these kind of conversations with somebody, if you recognize some kind of behavior that's inappropriate. All right? Now look, is what we're going to talk about here is what to be on the lookout for. There's 8 warning signs that are the basic warning signs. This may not be a comprehensive list, but I'm going to give you 8 signs as I understand it. All right? Number 1, they've got a fascination with weapons. Now, that's different than owning weapons. Certain people own a lot of guns, etc. But if they've got a fascination with weapons, and they're always talking about weapons, always talking about guns, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be guns, by the way. Weapons in general. Weapons could be a lot of different things. It could be guns, it could be knives, it could be some of these karate type weapons that get used. It could be any of those things. So if they've got a fascination about these things, and they're always talking about war and things of that nature, then, that could be a possible sign. All right, that's number 1. Number 2, this one I know is going to raise some controversy because it has to do with substance abuse. There are people out there that can't control their behavior. They use a lot of drugs. They use a lot of alcohol. They use a combination of both, and their mind is not right. We have all this controversy right now regarding, the use of marijuana, whether that's a drug that leads to other things. Don't want to get into that. Some of these states are passing legalized marijuana. I don't know if anybody, can really become violent with using marijuana. I don't know that. But, in my experience and friends that I've seen over the years, like even when I was in college, when they smoked marijuana, they basically kind of mellowed out, to be honest with you. I didn't see anybody going necessarily crazy over that. It was kind of the other drugs that were introduced to them that really had more of an impact. And again, I'm making it clear, I'm not a doctor. I'm not suggesting that. And I don't know that for a fact. Marijuana is still a controlled substance. There's a lot going on in that area right now. And when an employer has a zero tolerance policy regarding the use of marijuana, it's a zero tolerance policy whether or not, you're in a state where it has authorized either legal marijuana, or recreational marijuana rather, or medicinal use marijuana. Either way, it's still a federally controlled substance, and an employer can take action. So if in fact that you see somebody and you have a reasonable suspicion that they are in fact are under the influence of a controlled substance, if you got a policy in place, then go ahead and have them tested. If they test positive, then follow your company procedures and policies regarding a zero tolerance policy. All right. Number 3, stress, severe stress. Severe stress is a function of modern society, but people with a propensity toward violence allow that stress to become an excuse for violence. I am just stressed out. You've heard it. I'm stressed out. The person gets all upset. They get very vocal, and you have problems. Look, some people can't handle a high workload, and they get stressed out, and excuse the expression once again, and they just snap. But understand that before that, the signs were there. They're constantly complaining. They can't come to work. Supervisors talking to them, and you can see from their body language that they feel that they can't do anything right for that particular supervisor. Yeah, they could go out on a leave of absence. They could file for workers' comp because they're stressed out. But just remember that that is just simply one of the warning signs where somebody actually could get violent. All right. Number 4, a violent history. They've got a violent history. Now, this one I found kind of amazing, and I'll tell you why. If they had a violent history and you're aware of the history, my question would be, why are they there? Because first of all, if you did a background check and found out they had a violent history, you never should have hired them. The second thing is that maybe something occurred after they started working for you, but if they've got a history, which means that they've had a tendency in the past to get into arguments with people, maybe they've pushed somebody, touched somebody, shoved somebody, whatever the case may be, any of those kind of scenarios, in my opinion, they should not have to worry about a history, because the employer is under an affirmative obligation, in my opinion, not to keep a person like that employed, because it's only going to be disaster. There's also something out there called negligent retention. Now, if you know somebody's got a violent history, and they've done some things within the organization that you had an awareness about, and now they seriously hurt somebody, and now that person injured that was hurt by it goes to an attorney, they're going to claim negligent retention. Why did you keep them there if you knew that this person was that way? All right. Now, before I forget, this business about going down and getting restraining orders. Just remember, with restraining orders, it takes the person to go to court to get it. The employer can't get a restraining order on behalf of somebody. The victim is the one that has to go down and get the restraining order. So just to let you know that. So you can't do it. And if they end up getting a restraining order, and now the person works in the same facility, well, do the math. They can't work there if there's a restraining order in place, and they have to stay, a certain distance away from the other person. Okay. Now, I thought this one was interesting also. Decreased or inconsistent productivity. And as what they mean by that is that employees who have a tendency toward violence have a harder time keeping a consistent level of productivity. Now, I thought that one was very interesting because, come on, with that one in particular, you may just have some lazy people out there that they're just not doing it. And one day they feel motivated, one day they don't feel so motivated. So I don't know about that one. But again, they claim that that's a warning sign that this person may exhibit some kind of violent behavior. But I'll fall back to the same thing. If the person is inconsistent with the work that they're doing and they have low productivity, why do you continue to keep them employed? Some people do it because they just have to keep that warm body there. Okay? Listen, if they're not producing, give them warnings about their production level, and at that point, let them go if need be. All right. Now, let's see. That was number 5. So now let's move on to number 6. Social isolation and poor peer relationships. Loners. Here we go. Loners are more likely to act violently because they don't have such a social network to work out problems. Loners. One of the things that I did on some of those speeches that I've been giving on domestic terrorism and also on the impact of domestic terrorism on the workplace, I talk about these lone wolves that are out there. It is very hard to predict a lone wolf scenario. Even law enforcement has a hard time with that because he's just a single guy sitting at home that all of a sudden gets upset about something and goes to work, and creates havoc in the work environment. That's going to be very hard to predict. And now look, I don't want you to look at every time a guy is at work or a woman's at work and they are quote unquote off to themselves. They're a loner. Some people are just quiet. They just like to read on their lunch hour. They don't seem very social. I get it. But just remember, I don't want you to get paranoid about these things either. All right. Look for some of these other behaviors along with it. Now, number 7. I don't know if I agree with this one. I'm only giving you the results of the research. Poor personal hygiene. They say that when a person has poor personal hygiene, that they have moved into a position of I don't care phase. They're in the I don't care phase, which means that they don't care about life. They don't care about themselves. So, poor hygiene could be a factor. Now, I don't know if I agree with that. There are certain cultures, as an example, that they don't use deodorant. I can tell you that when I was in college and I played on the soccer team, I played, soccer with guys from all over the world. And some of them, we would talk about certain things and they say, well, in our culture, we don't use deodorant. Okay. There's people out there that are like that. So I would not look at this and say everybody who has poor hygiene is necessarily going to be a violent person. But again, I'm just giving you the, what they say is the norm here. The last one that I want to talk to you about is number 8, drastic changes in personality. It's a myth that you need to watch out for ultra shy or ultra outgoing employees. You need to pay attention to the person who flip-flops between the two. Look, I don't know anything about that. Like I said, I'm not a psychologist, etc. But, changes in personalities is always normally, and especially if they flip back and forth, I can understand that, I guess. You don't know what's going on in their life and what's causing this. So from that perspective, if you see somebody that's flip-flopping back and forth, they're going from a nice guy to a very violent guy, they say, hey, you know what? That might be a potential area where there could be some violence in the workplace. All right, well, those are the 8. I'm glad you asked me to follow up on that. And, please take it for what it is. Don't run off on a tangent on it. Just work with it. Look and see what makes sense to you. If you want to do a little bit more research on it, I would strongly suggest that. Talk to your legal counsel, whoever advises you on such matters, and then go from there. All right, with that last comment, it's time to close out this segment. I want to thank you for listening, but you can also hear us on Facebook at Listen Up, and you can also subscribe to us on iTunes. Just search for Jim Potts, Listen Up with Jim Potts. And as a reminder, we take calls every third Friday between 9:45 and 11 a.m. You can call us at 855-4J-POTS, or you can reach us at 855-457-6887. Or you can email us at listenup@jameswilliampottsllc.com. Okay, I'm Jim Potts. I will continue to fight the fight, and thanks for listening.
Thank you for being a part of Listen Up with Jim Potts. We take your calls every third Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for your questions and concerns. Call us at 1-855-4J-POTS. That's 1-855-4J-POTS. Again, that's every third Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time at 1-855-4J-POTS. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on iTunes, and link up with us on LinkedIn. You can also email us at listenup@jameswilliampottsllc.com. Until next time, make it a great week.